Paul. In this clip we're going to look at the different patterns that you see in the cell sample at different times of the menstrual cycle and different times throughout life. So the cycle, we see estrogen and progesterone peaking at different times. In the first 5 to 10 days we will see a menstrual pattern characterized by endometrial cells and an intermediate predominant squamous pattern. At ovulation, where we have peak estrogen, we will see a very clean background with lots of superficial cells and some intermediate cells. And then in the second phase, the luteal phase of the cycle, when progesterone predominates, we will see a predominantly intermediate cell pattern, rich in glycogen often, and with lots of rods, lactobacilli present. These have a symbiotic relationship with the glycogen, and they feed on that, and that causes cytolysis, characterized by raggedy cells and bare nuclei. That helps maintain the acid pH of the vagina, and that helps ward off infection from diseases like Candida. So this is a typical pattern in the menstrual phase. So it's characterized by endometrial cells. You can see an exodus here. Remember, it has those cells with more cytoplasm around the outside, and then a dense core of stromal cells. And the background is about mainly intermediate cell types. A bit of apoptotic debris in amongst the endometrial cells, as you often see. And then, as I said, that contour arrangement. As well as those exodus, you see little clusters of endometrial cells like this. So a pretty high NC ratio, but a uniform cell size and a bit of sort of three-dimensionality and overlapping of the nuclei there. No columnar shapes, no endocervical organization, even though you can see the nuclei are eccentric. They're more kind of cuboidal cells. So this is typical in up to day 10 of the menstrual cycle in women of reproductive age. We shouldn't see these postmenopausally, and we shouldn't see these before menarche. Ovulation, this is that peak of estrogen period, and you can see it's a very clean background, no debris or leukocytes. There is a lot of superficial cells here, so the pycnotic cells, mixed with some intermediate cells, but this is a nice mature ovulatory pattern. This is luteal phase, so this is the cytolytic pattern I was talking about. Progesterone is predominant. All these cells are intermediates. You can see they're sort of clustered, and it's got a messy background, and that is made up of dodeline bacilli. You can often see them lying on top of the cells, as you can here. And notice how there is bare nuclei like that, and this material, which is just sort of fragments of broken down cytoplasm. Cells themselves often have a kind of ragged edge to them as they're being broken down. And it's a little yellow tinge to the cytoplasm here, that's glycogen. If your pap stain's working well, you should get nice yellow coloration of glycogen. This is just another field. You can see the yellow coloration in the top left cell there, glycogen, and then the dodeline bacilli lying over the top of the cells. So a lot of that gets filtered out, but it tends to cling to the cells. This finally is a pattern of atrophy. So this is seen when there's insufficient estrogen and progesterone to mature the epithelium above a parabasal level. Sometimes this is a bit mixed, so you will see intermediate cells here, and sometimes you might even see the odd superficial, but the majority of cells are immature squamous cells, so these are parabasal cells really, and you can see they often form these cohesive groups of squamous cells. I can tell they're squames, they don't have palisading, they don't have honeycombing, and the cytoplasm is fairly abundant. It's dense and homogeneous with a well-defined border, and the nuclei are centrally placed. And you can see there's probably a couple of layers of cells there in that atrophic group. So we would expect this pattern to occur postnatally, postmenopausally, and prior to menarche. This is just another example of atrophy. You can see this one is maybe a bit more mixed. So in addition to what would be probably 80% parabasal cells that we can see here, we also have around the place the odd mature cell, so a superficial cell and some intermediate cells. Quite a bit of debris and neutrophils here, notice. That's often the case. Without that maturation to an intermediate layer with the accompanying acid pH created by the lactobacilli, much more prone to infection, and atrophic vaginitis is a common pattern. So just in summary, those patterns, we should see endometrials and blood up to day 10. In the middle of the cycle, we should see at ovulation a clean background with superficial cells and intermediate cells. That's an estrogenic pattern. Second half of the cycle, we should see a pattern that's primarily intermediate cells, often with cytolysis and dodeline bacilli. And finally, that atrophic pattern we should see in women who have low levels of estrogen and progesterone, and they are in postmenopause where there's no hormone replacement therapy being undertaken, and also usually in breastfeeding women postnatally.